Welcome to the Red Wagon Estate Planning and Elder Law Show, hosted by me, yours truly, Jeffrey Bellomo, where we discuss all things estate planning and elder law, and well, hey, anything else we want to talk about. Now, on today's episode of the Red Wagon Estate Planning Elder Law Show, we are going to talk specifically about estate planning and elder law. In fact, we are going to be discussing who should decide what a person needs. Now, I'll talk further about it and explain it, but it has been coming up a lot for me over the last couple years when I hear from clients when they say, my advisor said I have to avoid probate. My bank officer told me I need to add a joint owner on the account. When an attorney said you have to get a revocable trust to avoid probate, or whatever, right? Fill in the blank. And I really just wanted to take time on this show to talk about you, the consumer, are the only person who should decide what they need and that they don't need. And you should be educated, you should understand the pros and the cons, and then ultimately you make the decision that's best for you and your family, and nobody should tell you what's important to you. All right. You can tell I'm getting a little worked up here today, but I'll explain why as we go through the podcast. Before we get there, though, I just want to remind you that you should not take what you hear from this show, or any other show for that matter, to constitute legal advice. If you are looking for legal advice, please contact an attorney licensed in the state that you reside in, who practices in the area of law that you are looking for advice in. And after you meet with them, discussing your specific factual situation, then and only then should you take what they're giving you to constitute legal advice. At Bellomo Associates, we educate so what happened to my family does not happen to yours. We offer free educational workshops in the areas of pre-planning estate planning, Medicaid crisis planning, life care planning, special needs planning, as well as post-death administration, whether it be for somebody who has a will and needs to go through probate, or somebody who has a trust and needs to do trust administration. You get educated, you understand the information, and then you're able to make an informed decision about what is best for you and your family before you have any cost out of pocket and before you have to pay for advice or really pay for education. So that is what we do at Bellomo Associates. If you would like more information, please check us out on the web at www.bellomoassociates.com. That is B as in boy, ELLOMO associates.com, or give us a call at 717-845-5390. All right. I am a person who likes to read the conclusion of the book before I read the book. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the conclusion, and then I'm going to explain why I decided to talk about this today and what is making me so worked up about it. The conclusion of the book is, I believe as counselors, as lawyers, as professionals, our job is to educate. Our job is to describe or explain the pros and the cons and the options and the costs, and then get out of the way and let the client decide what is best for their family. Now, why I'm getting so worked up about this is because over the last several years, I have seen numerous clients who have come into my office who said, I added my kids as joint owners on the accounts because the bank teller told me it would be more convenient for my family if the assets transferred automatically to them. Or I beneficiary designated everything to my family because my financial planner told me that it would be cheaper to avoid probate and non-probate beneficiary designate everything. Or I did a revocable trust because online or on TV, I heard a public personality say that everybody needs to avoid probate and everybody should have a revocable trust. Or an attorney told me that I didn't need a trust because I didn't have millions of dollars, or an attorney told me I didn't need something because I only had a million or two, or whatever, right? Fill in the blank. And I completely understand that consumers rely on professionals to give an opinion. I get that. And I do understand where they kind of rely on the expertise of the person that they're meeting with, right? Another example is clients who come in who say, I gifted this money out over the last several years because the accountant told me that there was this annual exclusion gift that allowed me to give it away tax-free. And for those of you who know our firm and who have been through any type of workshops at our firm, you know that I actually created a workshop or a concept called 3 lands, where I teach tax land, long-term care land, and estate planning land. And I literally run around the room from land to land talking about each rule and how in every land, the answer to the client solely depends on what they think is more important, right? Is tax planning more important? Is making sure that if they end up in a long-term care situation, is it more important for them to not lose their assets or to protect something for their family? Or in estate planning land, is it most important to remain in control, to not give up? And the whole point of the workshops is so that the client gets to decide, I'm valuing this as the most important thing. And I understand the consequence that if I say this land is more important than this land, what that means and what that could mean for the family and how that could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how the facts turn out. So where I struggle is it's very easy for a professional to give their opinion and for them to tell you, you need to do this because that's how they feel about it. But that doesn't mean that that's how you feel about it. That doesn't mean that that's what's best for your family. So what really sort of prompted this discussion today is for the last couple of weeks, I have been sort of just watching as clients are coming in, and a lot of these scenarios are presenting recently where, well, I added the joint owners, I gave the annual exclusion gifts, I did a revocable trust, I don't need this type of trust, whatever it is. But it's never because I think that this is what's best for me. It's because so-and-so told me. And there has been this string that has been going around on some attorney listservs about some attorneys saying, I don't believe that trust should be used for people unless they have millions of dollars. Or I don't believe that trust should be used because the crisis rules are currently favorable and it's easy to get a spouse qualified and people don't really worry about the children. They don't care about the children. Look, I'm here to tell you that that is none of my business. I am here to tell you that for every client that comes in my office, they have a different opinion as to what's important to them. And what I have found is that if you ask the client, are they looking to keep costs down to the family, or are they looking to protect assets for the family? Are they looking to make it the most convenient for the family? Or are they looking to save on taxes? Or are they looking to fill in the blank? It's different for every single family. There are no two families that are the same. And they're going to value certain things very differently based upon what has happened to them, what experiences they have, what's occurred to them in their lifetime. So if I said to a family whose grandfather ended up in a long-term care facility and all of the assets ended up going to long-term care because they were told by an attorney that because they didn't have millions of dollars, they didn't need to do trust planning, that wasn't important to them, they would tell you you're crazy. And if you got to talk to that grandfather who lost everything, although he didn't know it, because he was in a long-term care facility and didn't have his mental faculties about him, if that would be what he would have want have happened, I know that he would have said, no, absolutely not. But what happened in that specific case is that he was told by an attorney, because you don't have millions of dollars, it's not important. You don't need it. And then he lost everything. And his family ended up losing a lot that they didn't have to, because that attorney had an opinion about what was important, and that millions of dollars was all that it was worth protecting. And if you didn't have millions, it wasn't worth it. Guys, I'm here to tell you, somebody with $300,000, $600,000 cares more about that $300,000 to $600,000 than the person with $5 million. And so why should the professional be telling somebody that they need or don't need something based upon that person's opinion or specific beliefs about what occurs, right? It's real easy in an ivory tower to say you don't need something unless you have something, because maybe you do or maybe you don't. And maybe that's what happened to you. But that family is the one who should ultimately make the call. And for the family who was told by a financial professional, non-probate beneficiary designate everything to save a few dollars on attorney's fees, which I totally get, and I'm all about avoiding probate and avoiding the cost of probate. I'm all about it. But by doing it that way, how many times I've seen families whose spouses have ended up leaving all of the money, all of the wealth to a new spouse, and the children got nothing because they didn't do proper planning. Or when a child receives it and they get divorced and they had used that money to pay down marital debt, and then the spouse walked away with half of it. I've seen those situations time and time again. And so for that professional who said, just do this because it's best for you, who didn't say, now understand that if your spouse puts all these assets as joint with their new spouse, it may not go to your children. Or if you gift this money away, even though you're allowed, if you end up in a long-term care facility, there's going to be a situation. Or if your child takes this money and spends down the money on the marital debt to bring down the marital debt and the spouse leaves, they'll take half. If they didn't say the if this will happen, that's horrible, because these families are suffering consequences that they didn't even know were possible consequences, right? How about a situation where a bank officer tells someone to add a joint owner on the accounts, or to put the children's name on everything to avoid probate, to keep it, simpler and easier and keep costs down. And then that child ends up taking the money and losing it, whether it be to a car accident, a divorce, to an addiction, to whatever. They didn't understand that. Or when a joint owner is added and the child passes first, and then the parent now has to pay inheritance tax on the money that they own because they added a joint owner, and they didn't know that if the child passed, they had to pay inheritance tax. What I find is that as professionals, we have experiences. We have situations that have played out in our lives and for our clients. And so we have beliefs based upon that situation. I do not believe for 1 second that the attorney in the online discussion with other attorneys who said, if they don't have millions of dollars, it's not worth it, that person was a wonderful human being, and that they truly believe that. And based upon their experiences, that's what they think is best for themselves. But what I question is, why should that attorney decide for his clients or her clients that therefore, unless you've got millions and millions of dollars, what you have isn't worth it? What you have isn't worth protecting? Or for an attorney who says, hey, I only care about the spouse. I don't think that you should worry about protecting assets for other family members. And because of that, then you shouldn't do it because you don't need it. I think that those individuals are good people. That's the belief that they have about the situation. But I know a lot of clients whom we've educated over the past 20 years who made a decision, understanding the consequences, understanding the situation, understanding the pros and the cons, who decided, yes, I want a guaranteed result. I don't want to risk the chance that my spouse could die before me or that my spouse could be in a nursing home before me. I don't want to risk that I can't protect anything for the kids if I don't do something now. I want the guaranteed result. And I think that a couple $100,000 or $500,000 is more than enough to spend a couple thousand to protect it. And they were happy. Biggest, most just incredible clients that I've worked with. They made that choice for themselves and they're 100% satisfied with it and they love that choice. But had they gone to somebody who specifically said, you don't have millions, you don't need this, or you don't need to worry about protecting for your spouse because the current rules are good, so don't worry about it. Well, yeah, but what if one of them dies? What if one of them ends up in a long-term care situation first? What if the laws change, right? What if you do want to protect for the kids? And I don't think that it's good on either side, meaning I don't think that an attorney should tell you either way what you should do. I don't think an attorney should be telling you what you should do for you because that's based on their personal beliefs. I think they should educate. I think they should show you both sides, and I think they should step out of it and let you decide. Now, maybe they say, if it were me, I would whatever. But I do that understanding that if this happens, if that happens, if this happens, as long as there's an explanation. But I don't think that there is. And look, I acknowledge it. Are there attorneys out there who are pushing people into doing certain types of things because they believe it's what they need? Sure. I'm just saying we shouldn't be doing it on any side. We should be presenting the facts. We should be educating on the law and allowing the client to decide what is best for them and their family. Because I do see all sides of it. I do see that there are attorneys taking advantage of clients. I do see that there are professionals who truly believe that they're giving the best advice that they can give their client based upon the circumstances that they have seen play out and their beliefs. But if the facts don't turn out the way that they're assuming, I need to know that the client understands the risk associated with it, that the client understood what would therefore happen if they went with this. So getting educated for yourself, for your family, and understanding all of the different options, all of the different circumstances that if they play out, what it would mean, and then you deciding. Nobody should tell you whether you have enough money to do something. I always tell this story, and as I'm doing this podcast today, this story is resonating with me again, and it just kind of highlights exactly what I'm talking about. Early on in my career, I was meeting with a lady who came in, she got educated, she went to the 2-hour workshop, she understood the 3 lands, and she went ahead and made a decision. And she decided to go ahead with some trust planning. And then in the next meeting, I was meeting with her, and I started asking questions about different asset levels, about how the assets were titled. And I made a determination in that meeting that day that I didn't think that she made the right decision previously. And essentially, I was offering her money back, and my comment was, ma'am, I don't think that you should spend this money to protect that money. Now, I could easily give the amounts. I give the amounts in every workshop, but I don't want people to get hung up on how much money she had because it doesn't matter. But her response back to me is what will live for me forever. She put her finger on the edge of my nose and she said, Sonny, how dare you? How dare you tell me what's important to me? My scumbag of a husband left me when the youngest was 3 months old. And if you're telling me that that money would be able to protect my money guaranteed after 5 years, that's the best money I ever spent. If the government can't take it, if the kids can't lose it, if I can't, that's the best thing ever. And how dare you tell me what's important to me? All right, now, I will tell you, she had around $100,000. And I will still tell you that to this day, I would not have done it if I were her. I wouldn't have spent that money. She is my largest referral source. She tells everybody about me. She tells everybody. Why? Because I listened. I let her make the decision that was right for her. Now, I did later try to say to her, "Hey, I'll give you your money back because I don't know that you made the right decision." But to her, it was the best decision, and it is the best decision. Years later, she refers more to us than anyone else, and she tells everybody, "Look, he will educate you. He will tell you the pros, the cons, the goods, the bads, and he won't tell you what to do for your situation because you get to decide that." Now, I tried in hers a little later, and she put me in my place. But I have equally had as many clients the other way, which is millions and millions and millions of dollars, and didn't want to spend maybe a little more than what she spent to protect millions. In fact, the guy that I think of all the time for this scenario is he looked at me and laughed and just said, "Man, if you think I'm writing you a check for that amount of money, you are out of your mind." And I said, "Sir, you do understand that from a federal estate tax perspective, I can immediately protect this money. From a long-term care perspective, after 5 years, I can protect this amount of money, millions and millions and millions of dollars." And his response was, "I'll be dead. I don't care. It won't matter to me. I'm gone. And the reason that I have this kind of wealth is because I'm tight with it, because I protect it, because I don't spend frivolously. So how dare you tell me that I should spend this to protect those millions? I don't care. I don't care if my kids lose money because of my long-term care. I don't care if I lose, at the time, 50%, but now maybe 40% to federal estate tax. That's my kids' problem. That's what's left over." But in both of those scenarios, what I learned was it was what each individual wanted. And while I didn't agree with what they decided, I gave both of them the space to educate them, give them the costs, and now I don't even really give opinions anymore. Because what I've realized is my opinion is irrelevant. My opinion doesn't matter. My job is to educate and to show both sides, pros and cons, but also every ultimate decision or what ends up happening will depend on how the facts turned out. So one of the things that I do now is I always say I don't second guess other professionals. I don't. And the reason for that is when somebody comes in and explains what happened, it's real easy to say, "Oh, well, they screwed up. They should have done this. They should have done that." That's what's called Monday morning quarterback, right? That's what's called hindsight's 2020. Sure, if I knew how everything was going to turn out, I would be able to tell you exactly what is going to happen and what you should do. But because nobody knows what's going to happen, in the moment that you decide what's important to you and your family, and you decide what plan to put in place, in that moment, you made the right decision. And that means that you made the right decision ultimately, regardless of how the outcome turns out. Because in that moment, you were able to evaluate the tax side of it, the long-term care side of it, the estate planning side of it, the loss of control, the taxes, whether I have money that I want to protect, whether this is important to me. Do I want to protect it from a future spouse? Do I want to make sure it goes to my children? Do I want to make sure my children don't lose it to a divorce? Those are all questions that are ultimately only for the person who is making the decision on their estate plan. And as long as you give them space to be educated and to make the decision, then they made the right decision for them. So I never second guess a professional anymore, because I realize just because they came into my office and it didn't turn out the way that they wanted does not have anything to do with the decision that they made that day. For that client, that was the right decision, as long as the professional didn't tell them what to do. It is just amazing to me how you can have some of the smartest people in the country talking through emails and through listservs about what somebody should do and having complete opposite polar opinions on it. And it's all based on their view. It's all based on the millions of dollars or lack of $1 million, or, hey, look, we have to educate. We have to say what's the chances are, what the probability is, what the possibilities are, how it works, how you can access or how you cannot access. For some people, like I said, that gentleman, people sometimes don't care if there's an extra cost for probate. They don't care if money gets tied up a little longer. They don't care if the attorney gets paid a little more on the back end because they don't want to pay it on the front end. They don't care if the children get the money immediately and there's direct access to it. Every one of those are things that will determine which plan to go with, but everybody's different in how they feel about it. So I hope this podcast made a lot of sense. It's a long-winded way of saying only you get to decide what you need. Only you get to decide what's important to you. Only you should be deciding whether it's okay for you to do a will, to do a revocable trust, to do an asset protection trust, to do a tax trust. Now, with a tax trust, I would say if you don't have somewhere around, 13 million, 14 million, because the federal estate tax limit is 13.99, you probably shouldn't. And an attorney probably should tell you that you don't need it currently, but then advise on what's going to happen in the future with the federal estate tax. But my point is, it's what you want, because every one of us is going to be different. Every one of us is going to value different things differently. And maybe you do want a guaranteed result. Maybe you don't want to rely on something not happening to a spouse, or the laws not changing, or someone not becoming incapacitated, or your children not getting divorced. There's a lot of reasons that go into different planning options. And once you understand them, then you get to decide. And do I expect that you'll understand 100% of everything? No, I don't. But I know that inherently you're going to do what's right for you and your family. And as long as I educated you and I told you the pros, the cons, the goods, the bads, what the current laws are, what it could, ultimately it's your decision, and we should respect that as professionals. And what I would say to the professionals out there, if any one of these examples that I gave, as far as, if some people think all people should avoid probate, all people should do non-probate beneficiary designations, all people should do these types of trust, all people should, any absolute, like all or none, is very, very, very risky, because each individual is different. They have different feelings, beliefs, and what's important to them. So we have to let the clients decide what is best for them. And again, watching all of the disagreement among some of the smartest people that I know in my life says there is no perfect answer. The perfect answer is after we see how the facts play out and we know exactly what occurred, but we don't get that luxury. We don't get that ability. So educate yourself, educate your family. Be strong about what's important to you, and then weigh out all the pros, the cons, and then decide what's best, and then move forward, and don't look back, and be proud about the decision you made. And regardless of how the facts play out, you made the right decision for you and your family on the day that you made it. So I'm proud of you. Get yourself educated. Make the decision best for you and your family. As you can tell, this is a very passionate topic for me. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Red Wagon Estate Planning and Elder Law Show as much as I did. If you're looking for those educational opportunities, they're absolutely free at Bellomo Associates. Give us a call at 717-845-5390, or check us out on the web at www.bellomoassociates.com. That's B as in boy, ELLOMO. There is no perfect solution. You want to get everything that you need so that you can decide what you want, right? It's very hard to decide on something when you don't know how it's going to turn out. So build a plan that can be flexible, that can be comprehensive, and that does what you want it to do. So look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Red Wagon Estate Planning and Elder Law Show. Until next time, we'll see you real soon.